right, why don't we begin? Hey, thanks everybody for attending today. This is our webinar on what's new for Webcon Bps 2020. My name is Mike Fitzmaurice. I'm Webcon's Chief Evangelist and the Vice President for North America. There's not a lot of introductory work here, and essentially, look, this is a warning slide or an intro slide or an agenda setting slide, but the thing to keep in mind here, the most important thing to keep in mind, is that I am assuming that you know something about Webcon Bps. This is not the overview of the platform webinar. We do those once a month, and we'll do that for anybody one-on-one if they want it, but we do it as a general webinar once a month, usually the first week of the month or so on. So that's coming up in about 2 weeks. This, we're assuming you know something about us and you just want to know what's new for 2020. We do incremental releases multiple times a year, but we do a big release every year. This webinar is all about that, and we're going to jump into the details right here, right now. Now, the biggest news, at least to me, I find this one the most exciting and the most personally useful. We have a subscription model. We introduced that last year, actually, but we now have available for trials and very soon for production software as a service. We have a multi-tenant offering. You can find it at webconapps.com. And you can use it to manage subscriptions, even for on-premises deployments. You can provision SaaS tenants, and we offer anyone, literally anyone, a 14-day trial. Well, in fact, you know something? Let me show you. I'm going to demo as much of this stuff as possible. Oh, and you know something that occurs to me? There's one other thing that you should know about before I show you this. If you go to howto.webcon.com, and you go here to Webcon Bps latest version, everything I'm going to talk about today, it's here. If you want the release notes, we have this, updates to Webcon Bps 2020.1. This is a sort of dispassionate clinical write-up that just lists everything that's in the new release. If you'd like it to be more of a descriptive, elaborate business writing type thing, we created a document for that here as well. And of course, you can always get the current build there. So howto.webcon.com and latest version, you can get all the information. I mean, I want you to stay on this webinar, make no mistake, but I can only cover so much. Everything is in that. Now, this is webconapps.com. And the thing I'd like you to notice is that we show you some of our pricing, at least for the subscription plans. And if you'd like to see it in US dollars or euro or Polish zloty, you can get it any way you want. I'm going to stick with US dollars. I'm more familiar with that. Now, this is where you can sign up for a license-only plan and deploy the software yourself in your own infrastructure, but still pay us through this portal. Or you can, a foundation plan and an enterprise plan, those are software as a service offerings. Want to see what it's like to sign up? Let's do this. Now, I just created, the only thing I did in advance is I set up an account, just a login. I registered a new login. I have done absolutely nothing else. Let's log in. All right, you need to provide some basic information about your company. What country am I in? I do live in the United States, so I'm in Seattle. Let's use the address of the Webcon office here in Seattle. Tax ID. Actually, we are working on this. Right now, it's a required field. the United States, we don't really use those, so I'm just putting in a fake number. We're working on that. Company phone, well, let's see if I can get away without doing it. And company email address. Let's go. What? Nope, we need something here. Let's see. All right, here we go. Great, all done. Don't need to change it. Let's go to subscriptions. All right, we have none yet. Let's add one. And what it's going to do is offer a domain name for you. You can change it to whatever you want. All right, and you indicate what kind of a plan you want and how you want to pay for it. So if you wanted an enterprise license, for example, and you indicate how many users, these are our bands of users. It's the same price between 26 and 50 users, for between 1 and 25, and so on and so forth. Power users would be the ones that are allowed to administer and the ones that are allowed to build applications. You also want to indicate what time zone you're going to operate in. Again, I live in Seattle, so I'm going to make it Pacific. Oh, and I'm not going to make this an enterprise tenant. This is going to be a trial tenant. Now, license only, that's if you're paying for it or signing up for it through here and then downloading the product yourself and deploying it yourself, either in a private cloud like an Azure tenant or deploying it on premises. Foundation and Enterprise, those are SaaS. Trial is SaaS as well. It'll be for 14 days, and it can only be done once per account. So it's a 14-day trial. You can't keep repeating trials over and over again, at least not on the same account. And it's fixed to up to 10 users and 1 power user account. In fact, that's the account it's going to be, and you need to provide an initial administrator password. All right, and then I'll go to confirmation. I think this is it, and we don't need to provide any more info, but I do want to wait around for just one moment before putting this aside. This is everything you have to do to set something up. In fact, let's pop back to this in a minute. I'm going to slide over here to a different environment where I already have something set up. And let's go to webconbps.com and I'll sign in. Now, if you do this with an Active Directory or Azure AD account, you can get an automatic. Okay, looks like we're in the middle of restarting some stuff, but you can still see what's going on in the portal. All right, this is my existing trial subscription, and if I click in here, I will see a couple of things, all of which are somewhat important. One is the link to the portal homepage, and I actually have already opened that up there. The second thing is a page for assigning user licenses and the administrative username. Okay, so if I go here, that opens a new tab. And because I have set up directory synchronization, it went with the first 10 entries in my Azure AD environment. You set up Active Directory synchronization there, or you can create manual users and link them to individual email accounts. All right, so that, as they say, is that. More details about the subscription. This is kind of a big deal. So there is an address that you can go to with a remote desktop client, or you can download the installer for a custom dedicated remote desktop client. But we do use a remote app in order to make that work. In fact, if you want to see what the experience is like, that remote installer that downloads a Windows application, I am running this on a Mac, but I used that address in order to create a remote desktop client. And this is what it looks like. I already have the username and password in the configuration. So you get a RDP session that spins up an immediate copy of Designer Studio, and it is ready to go. There's nothing else, it's just Designer Studio. And when you close Designer Studio, it closes the entire session. That is pretty much how it works. All right, other than that, you know, whoops, let's get that back. You are dealing with, that's fine. Okay, it came back. It's just Webcon Bps. There's no magic, there's nothing crazy about it, it just works. Okay, so that is the software as a service offering. This is still in the middle of provisioning that initial session. I'm actually going to close this. Yep, it's okay. Close the window. All right, moving on. Deployment. We've done one thing for deployment that I think is going to help out a lot of people doing structured work. Let's say that you want to build something in a dev environment and then deploy it to a production environment, but you don't want people messing with it in production. You can enforce that much more easily. You used to be able to do it manually. Let me show you what you had to do manually. Let me come here. Any application you want, if you go to the applications or any individual processes settings page, there is an option to click this, process modified by export import mechanism. And if you check this, the whole thing becomes locked down. You can override it, but you've got to explicitly check out the application and you've got to click through warning messages all the time if you want to modify something that's been imported from somewhere else. Well, we make that the default now. In fact, let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go here. In fact, I'm going to do this inside of webconapps.com so you can see it happening inside our software as a service offering. And let's go here to tasks and let's go here to import an application. And if all goes well in a second, there we go. There we are. So I will open a exported Webcon Bps package. And as soon as it comes in, and this won't take very long, I'm going to see that there is a warning everywhere. Let's go ahead and finish the import process. There we are. The whole thing's finished. Great. Okay, so if I choose this new application, and I attempt to look at any of these applications, notice I see this nice little warning here. Process imported to environment via the export-import mechanism, manual modification is disabled. If I want to, I can still check out a process for edit. And look at all the warnings I'm getting. So I'm actually not going to do this. And that, as they say, is that. Just wanted to make sure you saw how that mechanism worked. By the way, I forgot to mention that if you get the trial environment up, we give you 8 different applications to play with, and they've all been updated with the new features. And that is definitely something worth checking out. Okay, with that done and that out of the way, let's move on. In the portal, we've made a bunch of changes. So you can do a custom dashboard as an application homepage. Actually, I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and run through some of these things. Um, some of these we introduced over the course of last year, but they're now official features inside of the environment. So let me go here to, yeah, this is an overall thing. Let's go into an application. How about we pick this onboarding one will do fine. And by default, okay, I've already done it here. Notice how when I clicked on that application, it gave me a user dashboard right away. It did not give me the normal system dashboard that you've typically seen in the past, where you saw a description of the application and the contact information for the owner, some start buttons, some suggested dashboard and reports, and an activity log. Look, I don't hate this, but this assumes, in fact, I kind of like it if I'm thinking like an administrator. But if I'm thinking like a participant, like a normal user, I'd kind of like to see a user dashboard the moment I open the application. How do you do that? It's incredibly easy. Let's turn on edit mode. Notice how there's this little gear right next to home now? Click it. Choose the dashboard that you want to see. I'm going to leave it with this because that allows me to show you a couple of other features we've got. That was custom dashboard at homepage. Let's look at manual sorting and new widgets. So manual sorting means I get to come over here to reports and change them any way I want. We won't necessarily sort them alphabetically anymore, or we will by default, but you can change anything you want. We also have a bunch of new controls. Let's go down here and add a new zone so I can show you what I'm talking about. And if I click on this, okay, so a couple of these you might have seen before. So start report, abstract, or just raw text, that's there now. But look at these miscellaneous ones. All those things that you had in the system dashboard that you might actually still want to see, like for example, a recent activity log. Yeah, you can embed the recent activity log directly inside of your user-centric report, and no one's going to complain, and it's just going to work. Let's throw in a 2-column report, and I'll show you a couple of other fun things we can drop in. How about, let's see, that's a start button, report text, task counter, report tile. You can bring up one statistic about the current report in there. That's of some use. But here's the thing I really wanted to show. You can embed Power BI reports inside of this. And of course, you have to have Power BI configured, and I don't. But the point is, if you want to embed Power BI reports in amongst everything else we do, go for it. It works really, really well. Those are the new widgets and Power BI support. Oh, and the quick search suggestion window. We've had search for a long time. Yep, I want to leave without saving. But now, if I start typing, let's see. There we go. You get quick searching. Basically, this feature exists in a whole bunch of different environments. You used to have to do an explicit search. Now we give you proactive search results within the user interface. I kind of think of this as the kind of thing you'd expect. We weren't doing it before, we do it now. It's nice. All right, let's move on. BPS groups. This is actually really cool. I'll show you what I'm talking about. If I go here to a dashboard and I go to administration, there are two things that I can deal with here. Custom integrations through the API, but we're not going to deal with that. Under user management, I have local groups. And I've created several of these already. So let's go here to just proof of concept, control line group, and we'll go into group details. And here's the ID. That can't have spaces in it, but here's the name, and it can, a friendly name. And which members of the group are there. I can edit it, change the display name, and add and remove group members this way. Now, that can contain users, that can contain Active Directory groups or accounts. Now, why do we do this? Because it is, if you assign permissions to your application and to your processes and so on, to BPS groups, what we call local groups, they become extremely portable. So when you are deploying from one place to another, like let's say let's say you are building this in your own private environment. You're not using the same Active Directory environment that's being used in production. Completely different act. Or if you're a consultant, you're building an application in your own environment, and your client obviously has a completely different Active Directory or Azure AD environment. So if I use these and I deploy to another location, all I need to do is indicate that my local group members are whatever they're supposed to be, but I don't need to redo all my permissions when I move from one place to another. It is really handy. So that's where I was going with that. By the way, here under user management and local groups, that's where you would be making setting up Azure AD integration if you were using Webcon Apps, our software as a service offer. New processes. I love this. This is really, really handy because it's saving me a ton of time from something I used to have to do in the past. In fact, this is dictionaries and document templates. It's much easier to show this to you than it is to talk about it. So I am going to open up, let's see. Oh yeah, okay, let's do this. Here is an application, I call it law firm client intake, but there are a couple of things that you should see. One is I have a process here with an extremely simple workflow. And you know something? It only exists for the sole purpose. In fact, I don't even have any custom fields. This process exists so I have a way to keep a library of documents attached to my application. I use these as templates for generating custom documents. That kind of thing happens all the time. I could keep the documents in a SharePoint library, but then I need to deploy the templates separately, and keeping them maintained can be difficult. Keeping the whole thing together in my application, that's really handy. And I've gone ahead and dedicated a process just to holding documents. I don't want to do that necessarily, or maybe there's a better way to do it, or adding some custom features to make it even handier. And for that matter, there are countless other scenarios where, let's go here to marketing. I might have, nope, I don't in this particular application. Let's pick a different one. How about, yeah, let's use this. I have registrations for a course, but I also have a separate process just to maintain a list of classes. There are times I would really prefer to be able to maintain a lookup list or a dictionary in an independent way, and now you can do it. So let's do the lookup. Let's do a dictionary process. This is really, really handy. So a dictionary is a list you're going to use for looking up values. And yes, I know that you could, excuse me a second, I know you could come over here to data sources and create a fixed values list, but that means only the administrator or the process designer can maintain this list. What I really want here is something that looks, feels, and behaves like a standard process, so I can throw it into an editable report, treat it like a SharePoint list in some ways. But I want that maintained by the users. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a dictionary process. And a lot of things are done for you in advance, but I'm just going to call this, let's see, pets. And form type, pet. Acronym, pet. Workflow name, pet. Lifecycle. And actually, let's call this pet types. Yeah. Pet type lifecycle. In fact, let's make use. There we go. That's one of those local groups I was talking about before. All right, this already exists. Now we have a workflow. The workflow is, oh wait, that's not the right one. Here it is, pet types. We have a workflow. It really does exist. You can't edit it. I mean, it's there. It's a very simple workflow, but it's just used for maintaining data. There is a form. You do have the ability to modify that as much as you'd like. I have a couple of fields built in already. There's a numeric ID. There's a flag to indicate whether it's active or not. And then I've got a name and description. So that's all good. I'm going to leave that as, actually, no, I'm going to do, well, no, this is fine. Let's do it that way. We're all good here, and let's go ahead and save this. Okay, the whole thing is ready. In fact, if I come over here to data sources, I now see that there is a dictionary here called pet types. It's a new type of data source. And if I come over here, let me see, how about we go back up to the top and I go into examples and I find my 2020 demo, and I don't really have anything here yet, but let's turn on edit mode. And now I can go ahead and add a new report to maintain that data. And one thing that I need to make sure I do, let's see, did I save the entire? Oh, let's go ahead and save the entire application. That was my problem. Okay, so I now have pet types, and let's go back here and let's refresh. And now if I click add new, I see dictionaries. Now this is just another type of report. A dictionary report looks almost like a table report, but it's just a little bit different. So what I've got here is, which process do I want to use? And this is the only process that's a dictionary process. I could choose all forms in that process or just pick one or a few. I'm going to choose that. And there's really nothing else to do. A lot of the things that you would normally set up have already been done. So for example, there already is a view. We've already added a button to that view for adding new items. In fact, the only thing for me to do really is to add custom columns, and name and description are already there. So, oh, give it a name. That would be good. Pet types. Now, a couple things to look at. Notice how there's an export to Excel. You can turn that on in any report, but we also have import from Excel set up. And so, yeah, if you've got a lot of data you want to load quickly, you can do that in one set. Now, a lot of people out there would create an elaborate mapping dialog so that you could go to a spreadsheet and indicate which column indicates which field and which rules and filtering criteria should be set up. We did something a little different because we don't think you do this every day. We give you maximum flexibility. So what I advise is clicking Export to Excel. There you go. And then you open this up and I'll enable editing. We've already put in headers that give us the GUIDs for the fields we're mapping to. So what you do is copy and paste or type in whatever, whether you want it to be active or not. Okay, dog. Let's do that. And maybe box. That's enough. All right, maybe one more. People watching that speak French if I spelled lapin incorrectly. Désolé. All right, let's Save that. Now again, I actually expect you to copy this from somewhere else and drop it in. Let's import the whole thing from Excel. Bam, bam, done. You can still open them up and edit them to your heart's content. It's really, really easy. That's it. That's a lookup. Document templates work pretty much the same way. So if I wanted to come up here and add a document template process, that's fine as well. And then those items in the document template list, that would be available to document generation activities and so on. That's pretty much that. I think you get the idea. So let's move on and talk about things that we're doing in forms. Actually, let's do, my favorite is right here, ready to go. So this particular form has multiple attachments, and up until 2020, I would have to open each one and then rummage through it for preview purposes. Well, notice these arrows now. I can go through all of the things at once. It's really, really easy. It's really, really painless. So multiple attachments in the same dialog. And then you can, if you're using, this is actually an IE thing, but you can add attachments directly out of the clipboard. Some customers are going to care about that a lot. Those of you that aren't using IE won't. But trust me, if you've got it, this is really handy. Preview related instances. Yeah, this is really, really nice. Check this out. We've had this for a while. If you were looking at a report or whatnot, and you clicked on any item, not on the link to go open the item, but just click on the item, we would pop up a preview window and we'd show you everything in it. In fact, you could even open this and edit it if you had the right privileges and such. Okay, that's really nice. But if you were in here and looking at a form and opened that up and you wanted to look at the sub workflows related to this form, if you clicked on this, it used to actually open up that entire item. So it would obscure this and you'd sort of drill down or switch to another page. Not anymore. We do preview view by default on sub workflows. And this is really handy. So it's a nice little convenient thing, but it's a convenient thing that really, really matters. And then for OCR, we've had OCR Verification View in classic forms, the ones that were based on SharePoint technology. But the platform independent modern form technology we introduced last year, now we have OCR Verification View working there. And by the way, modern forms absolutely work in SharePoint as well, especially Office 365 or anything else. Just because it's platform independent doesn't mean it's not SharePoint friendly. But the point is OCR Verification View works everywhere. And as for what OCR Verification View is, it's this. I have, you get a picture of the thing that's been OCR'd. And yes, based on AI and a couple of things, we've gone ahead and lifted items out of the scanned and OCR text and dropped it into form fields. But we may not have gotten it right. And this is the form view that allows you to tell us where we made mistakes or confirm that we did it correctly, and over time teach us how to do it properly. That's OCR Verification View, works everywhere now. Now, item lists got better. Whoops, pardon me. Item lists got a lot better. Essentially, if you're looking at changes in the instance history, changes to item lists show up there. Here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. If I were to go here to the historical view, and I had been making multiple changes to the item lists, you would see those changes showing up here. In fact, you can see them. Here are the channel recommendations, and if you drill down, you can see what the item list looked like here, and then you can see what it looked like here as changes took place to it. That's what it looked like, digital and communication, and then we crossed out communication and added in marketing automation. So changes to item lists show up in the audit trail. It's really nice. You can also put item list columns in reports now, which is really great. Check this out. This is a report, and right now I'm just looking at overall forms. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is we have prided ourselves for a long time on doing repeating tables right. So in other words, this could be a link to a different table in a different place. And look, there's some value to that, but the problem with doing it that way is that I don't get to preserve the fetched data over time for audit trail purposes. Keeping a copy of that data embedded here in a sublist is actually really useful. The second thing is I want to be able to secure the whole thing and create permissions to it that without having to create permissions in one place and another place and another place. This is actually something InfoPath did a good job of. So this is a package of data. It looks like a structured document with a details section. Yes, behind the scenes, this is one table. This is another table back in SQL Server. But because we always made you do an SQL query against the detail items, because we thought about this more like a document. Well, now we at Webcon really love the idea of you being able to have your cake and eat it too. And you can do this in reports as well. So I'm going to go into edit mode in this report and go to columns. And you'll now see that there are detail items inside the process. This column would not have been here in 2019 or years prior to that. But now, if I want to see a report on which channels are being selected, I can throw that in here. And now I'm just going to save the report and close it so you can see what I'm talking about. Now, this obviously results in a little bit of repeating data for these columns, but if you wanted to do a report on the items in the detail sections of forms, this is exactly where you would do it. And it just works. So I would probably create a report on frequency of usage of digital versus marketing automation versus communication and so on and so forth, and focus on these columns. But that was the quickest way for me to explain what was going on. All right. So yeah, it's really handy, it's really useful, and it really works and doesn't take any work on your part. Oh, another convenience thing, when you're specifying column widths inside of a list, we used to make you provide pixels, exact pixel counts. Not anymore. You can still do that, and sometimes you should, but you can also provide it as a percentage instead of a pixel count. Reports, well, you just saw me use item list columns in a report, but there are other new things that you can do inside of a report. Like Solar is the search engine that we bundle with our workflow engine. You can now use the index as a data source. Quickest way for me to display that in action, let's enable edit mode and add a new report. So the source can be SQL like it used to be, but now it can be the search index. And all the stuff that used to be there is still there, but if you specify, you're still looking at processes, you're still looking at fields, you're still looking at form types, you still have columns and everything to choose from. The thing is, if you do it from the search index source, it's a lot faster. That's the payoff. That there's always a cost. The cost is the data will be slightly out of date, often by just a couple of seconds, sometimes by a couple of minutes, depending on a lot of circumstances. But depending on what the report is for, that might be a very acceptable trade-off. But the performance increase is huge. All right, archived instances can now be included in reports and views. You can embed Power BI reports and dashboards. I already talked about that. This last thing is kind of handy. You can have a report hidden from the application menu. Let me show you what's going on here. This is the overall activity dashboard. I have a couple of different reports here. In fact, I've got 3 of them. And you know something? I might not want to see a ton of reports over here. I already have these embedded on a dashboard. I don't want them to also appear in this list. So if I mark a report as hidden from application view, it's still available for me to put on a dashboard. It's still available for me to use inside of a web part or a Teams panel or something like that. It's just not going to show up over here on the left. It's a way to declutter your application portal, that's all. Report is still completely available. We just stopped showing it off to the left. Rules. Yeah, rules rule in Webcon land, and this is no exception. We have done a couple of things. Well, we did a bunch of things to rules, but there are 2 things I care about the most. You want to look at more, read the document. But business rules can now be called inside of form rules. And that's the thing that's substantively really a big deal. Zooming in and out is a quick cosmetic thing, but it turns out to be extremely handy. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you hold down the control key and then scroll in and out, you can change the size of the rules window. And for big rules like that one, that's really handy. Now I did that so that I could stop talking about it. Now, here's what I really want to show you. We have things like business rules and we have form rules, and you'd be forgiven if you couldn't tell the difference because we use the same syntax for both. But there actually is a big difference between the 2. Business rules translate in the background to SQL commands. Form rules in the background translate into JavaScript commands. We give you a normal and much more friendly view of all of this, but there's some things we can do in SQL that we can't do in JavaScript, like query other data in other places. So we have this SQL command option that is available to me here. So if I want to check this, whether a particular item, whether a particular query is true or not, if I want that to have an effect on the user interface, I used to be able to have to store the result of this inside of a technical field, a hidden field, and then have this form rule read that field and then adapt accordingly. Not anymore. I don't have to do that anymore because we've got the ability to go straight here and look at business rules from inside of a form rule. And that, my friends, is really powerful. We're actually doing a ton of stuff with rules, but being able to call a business rule from a form rule is, for those of you that work with Webcon Bps all the time, you're thanking us right now. And believe me, when I found out about it, I thanked everyone too. All right, let's move on. Fields. Oh yeah, this is fun. Let's go through a couple of these. So we have nicer field tooltips. You'll need to see this in action for me to show you what I'm talking about. Let me see. How about, okay, yes, in this particular field, I do have some tooltips. So this, obviously, if you don't type one in, you don't get it. In the past, you used to see the tooltip when you hovered over the field, and this caused a lot of clutter for people, and they didn't like it, and I don't blame them. So we've done something that's pretty nice. If you see a little eye in a little information icon next to a field, that means there's a tooltip, and if you hover over it, then you see the tooltip. So you don't see clutter unless you ask for it, in which case it's not clutter at all, it's information. But we did that, it's handy. Autocomplete choices. You get to choose the number of characters that need to be typed before you start the autocomplete, and you get to choose the maximum rows that are displayed. And if you want an example of what autocomplete is, let's see, I can't do that here, but Let's back out of this. And if I were to create a new one, this would be an autocomplete field. If I type T, nothing happens. If I type O, nothing happens. If I type R, now we start zooming down. We used to have a default of 3 characters. You can make it more than 3. You can make it fewer than 3. And the second thing is, let's see, let's do east. There, 3 answers come down. If you had lots and lots and lots of rows, you could indicate the limit on the total number of rows that would be displayed. It's a cosmetic thing to make the user interface a more pleasant place. But it's kind of handy, and you should kind of take advantage of it. Currency formatted floating point numbers will now default to the current form language. This is really, a lot of you are going to be very, very happy about this. Let me show you what I'm talking about. It used to be that if I added a field that was, let's see, amount, and I said it was a floating point number, I would always need to make sure I went over here to advanced configuration and I say, if I show it as an amount, choose which layout I wanted. Some of you use commas to separate thousands and periods to indicate decimals, and some of you do it the exact opposite way, and there are other ways to do it too. Now we just look at your browser culture and adapt. That's the default. You want to force it, you can still force it. But that's kind of handy. All right, and the next one is my personal favorite. Multi-language choice fields. Now, Webcon has been good about multiple languages in many ways for years. It's one of the advantages of being a European software company where we deal with multiple languages all the time as opposed to it being an afterthought. So if I come here, almost anywhere I put in a field name, like for example, there's always a translation table. And if I was going to find out, let's see, if I wanted to translate this, let's see, the word for pet in French is animal de compagnie. French is not my first or even my second language. So again, if I'm butchering the pronunciation of this, désolé mes amis. Anyway, there. That's how we do it for field names and descriptions and document, and virtually everywhere you type something in Webcon land, we've got this. Now we can do it even better though. So check this out. I can go to a picker field and choose a choice field and go here to an item list or you know, a dictionary like that one I created already with pet types. And if I test this, you'll see that in the name field, I happen to have the English names for a lot of things. And over here in the description field, I probably should have created a custom field for this, but I reused the description field and I have the French terms. Good. So here's what I'm going to do. We can basically localize even the items in choice fields. So if I choose support multi-language names and I come over here, notice how our translation table appears now. It wasn't there before. And if I click on this, I don't type static text in here. What I do is I come over here and indicate which column in that item list contains the French translation. There. And now when I use this field, it's going to look at the current culture and or browser culture and switch and show me the right thing on the dropdown. It's the same field. It's the same row in the table. Everybody wins. So we just made it possible to localize the content for pick lists, and that is really handy. Data tables. These are a lot like item lists, except it's always externally fetched data, fetched at the time the form loads. We've always been able to export an item list to Excel and a report to Excel. Now you can also export data tables to Excel. It's a little thing, but again, for a certain number of applications, it's a big thing. And then lastly, we've done a lot of AI investments. And we're running low on time, so I'm not going to demo this, but I'll explain it as best I can, because I think we should have a webinar dedicated to AI stuff over the next couple of months. In the meantime, though, here's what we've done. We've done some more investment in AI, and we have created something called an insights panel. Let me show you what that looks like. There's not a lot of insights here, at least not yet. But there is something, I see suggested here, I haven't configured anomalies, or I might not have any, but we have two things that we show you inside of our application portal. One is suggested elements. And the way to think of this is, here are the items that might interest you. For example, whoops, excuse me, let me go back. Items started or approved by your close colleagues, or things started by you and recently approved or recently acted on in any way by other people. Or if it's part of your frequently used applications, or it's someone out there has an application with a people picker field and they choose, they choose you in it. Those things will show up. Let me show you what happens if you click on suggested. You now see a bunch of item cards. This is being facilitated with a combination of AI and search. So here are all the items out here. Think of this as similar to a task list, except rather than being tasks assigned to you, they're just stuff we think you want. And you can filter all of it, but yeah, open them up and you can see previews on everything, etc., etc. The other thing, and I won't demo this today, there is the anomalies view, which is, are these okay? Because they're a little weird and we want to make sure you see them. So for examples, if you've got a leave request solution or an absence reporting solution, and there are items where they're submitted after the leave date as opposed to in advance, or if someone's done a leave request for a long leave period, like very long, or you have an invoice that's got a very, very large amount, not large defined by you, large defined by the normal size of the invoices coming from that team. Or you have steps that you expect to have take a while, like a negotiation step, and they happen within a couple of seconds. That kind of means someone either didn't report it right away, or they are, or they didn't actually do a negotiation. Well, those will show up as anomalies. And where you have AI rules for tweaking all of these, like for example, if I think the sale date shouldn't change after the fact, I can indicate how important it is to have this show up as an anomaly. If something like this is irrelevant, I can say, no, I expect that to happen all the time. These are the kinds of anomalies we see. You tell us how important they are, and that'll impact how they show up inside of the anomalies report. That's it. So we did a lot of investment in AI. We'll cover this in greater detail very, very soon. Last thing, for those of you that like to extend the product, we have completely redone the web. Don't worry, the old one's still there. But we've completely added a new RESTful API. This one has got complete open API, the thing you used to call Swagger support. You want to see what it looks like? Let's go to this, just add the slash API after a portal address, and you can see the whole thing. Yeah, actually, that's not that interesting. Let's go here to models, however, and life does start to get interesting. So if you wanted attachment history data, this is the method you call to get it. This is the data that you supply to it, etc., etc. Completely self-documenting and invocable and all that good stuff. So we have a very nice RESTful API that's been redone with Swagger data. We have many more methods than there used to be. We have and SDK extensions, custom form fields, custom controls. Those now work on modern forms. And we have added new project libraries on both NPM and GitHub to get you started on creating customizations on top of all of that. And with that, before I open up the floor for a couple of questions, we've got 3 minutes for questions. If I end on time, don't worry, if you keep asking me questions, I'll keep answering them. But I cannot stress enough, don't forget, it's a new major release, and on major releases, you need to renew your licenses. If you're running Webcon Bps Express, you can use the username and password you were sent the original time to just activate a new license for a year. That username and password does not expire. If you are a commercial customer, then you just need to renew the license the normal way. You get a username and password to use to activate from within Designer Studio, and it just works. It's just, if you update the software without updating the license, your environment goes into a read-only state. Nothing gets lost, everything is still there, everything is still visible. You just will find that you can't make changes to anything, and that's not a happy thing. So don't forget to renew your licenses before as you update the software. And with that, I would like to say thank you, merci, danke schön, dziękuję, and probably several other languages and dialects that I'm not thinking of at the moment, and for that I apologize. Let's see if any of you want to ask questions. I am very happy. Just go into the chat window and type something. I will wait around for, well, I still have 2 minutes, so I will keep talking. Typical questions we get asked about this is, let's see, when do we expect the software as a service application to become available to everyone? It's available now, but the only type of tenant, or the only type of subscription you can create or that we're supporting at the moment is a trial subscription. We will be very, very vocal about our announcement of the being able to do enterprise subscriptions. That's a very short time from now. The infrastructure works. I think the bottleneck right now is making sure transacting money through it works properly. Have I added an enhancement that will allow you to format dollars in the US format? The answer is yes. That's actually always been there. It's just been something you had to explicitly choose because the default was to do it European style. Now, based on, and this was one of the slides from before, now the default will be formatted the way your browser language is formatted. So if your browser culture is English/US or English/Canada or French/Canada, dash actually, then it'll be formatted with the commas in the right place and the periods in the right place and so on. So the answer is, yeah, you get what you want. And you used to be able to do it, but you had to explicitly choose it every time. Given that I operate out of North America, I didn't love it. It was a trivial thing, but an annoying thing, and now it's gone. Any other questions? Let's see, I'll make one up. Is there any difference between the trial tenant on webconapps.com and BPS Express? There are at least two fundamental differences between the two of them, maybe three. Difference number one, it's only for 14 days, and it's done after 14 days. You can't renew it or anything like that, or create a new one. The second thing would be Express is free, like it's free in perpetuity. You can use it in production and so on. And then the third difference is there are one or two features that aren't available in the Express version. They are available in the trial version. Let's see, will you completely migrate to a SaaS model in the future, or will the classic model remain? We at Webcon pride ourselves on using consistent technology everywhere. We want you to be able, we'll always want you to be able to migrate from on-premises up to the cloud, and to migrate from the cloud back down. And we know that some people want to take tight control of everything. So we will always, always, always offer SaaS. We will offer run it inside of your own Azure tenant, and we will always offer on-premises. It's consistent and compatible technology in all three places. You can migrate anytime you want. That's a great question. I appreciate it. I hadn't thought to ask, yet alone answer that. But yeah, all we did is add a third way. We have no plans to take anything away. There's some people that really like being able to run it inside of an Azure tenant or an AWS tenant, because they can put it in whichever Azure data center or Amazon data center they'd like, sometimes just for regulatory reasons, sometimes just for political reasons. And we don't care. We think you should be able to have it the way you want it. Our initial offering of webconapps.com will be hosted in the Northern Europe data center. We will probably add one over in, I haven't figured out which data center would be the right one, but one in North America at some point in the future after that. But yeah, initially everything will run through Europe. What about from the licensing perspective? You bought licenses and you pay software assurance annually. Will this remain too? Yeah, of course it will. And that will, if you buy the license and you pay software assurance, that will always work for both on-premises and in the cloud. If you buy it, there is no provision for buying a software as a service subscription. So you would need to talk to your Webcon representative if you wanted to transition from a purchased license to a software, a cloud subscription, and see what options might be available to you. I think every one of those situations will be considered on an individual basis. But no, a purchase of the product is usable on premises and usable in a cloud infrastructure as a service scenario. That doesn't change. You keep doing software assurance, you are covered. But unless you negotiate something specifically that will have no impact on the SaaS offering. That is always subscription. And what you might not know, actually you might know it, the person that asked the question, but others might not, you can subscribe to an installable on-premise or installable infrastructure as a service deployment as well. You can subscribe to everything, or yeah, the subscription model works in all three places. The purchase model only works in infrastructure as a service or on-premises. Any other questions? I'll wait. Let's see, I'll just do a countdown. If one of you has a question that you're thinking of and it's going to take you a while to type it, please just type the word typing so I know a question's coming. Otherwise, I'm going to go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I guess there are no more questions. Hey everybody, I really want to thank you for attending. I really hope you like what you saw here today. And we are not done. Again, this is a big roll-up or a big release, but we do little releases all year long, and I know for a fact a couple of cool things are coming in just over a month. So yes, you'll see details about that and maybe even a little bit of webinar treatment on it too. Certainly a quick video on YouTube. All right, thank you everyone for attending. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. And with that, have a great rest of your day.